Welcome to the July 2023 midsummer edition of Traction REIA Online, totally online this month to be able to bring you very special session. We got 4 awesome investors in the spotlight, and we have a 5th awesome investor doing our market update specifically on pricing strategy. So quite an interesting evening you are in for now. All right, so we're going to swing this spotlight over to Charlie Einsmann. Charlie, how are you?
How is everybody tonight? Thanks for having me.
Doing good. Hang on, I'm trying to find you so I could spotlight you. There you are.
Probably towards the end.
No. It moves around.
I got here a little late.
Yeah, awesome. So, how's it going, young man?
We're doing really well. Thank you. How's everybody?
Awesome. So, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do in real estate investing.
Okay, so we have a 4-pronged business model. So we're a hard money lender. We're a private lender. That's phase 1 of our business. We buy tax lien certificates, DC, PG County, Maryland, and Montgomery County, Maryland. So we're a tax lien certificate investor. We fix and flip houses. We still do that to this day. And we also have a pretty good sized rental portfolio. We have residential rentals and we have commercial rentals as well. And so we basically got started with zero, and we morphed into all these different businesses. And if I would have told you that I was going to be a hard money lender one day, I would have been lying, because when I first started in this business, there was no such thing as hard money or private lending. There wasn't even anything called wholesaling. Any distressed assets that you bought, you basically fixed and flipped it. There was no such thing as signing contracts. So we've been doing this on the fix and flip side since 2003. We've been in business on the hard money side since 2012.
Nice.
So we have quite a track record, quite a lot of experience.
That's a lot of different aspects of real estate investing. What's your favorite?
Actually, my favorite is obviously I like hard money lending. That's fun, but I spent all my time evaluating deals, and it's very challenging these days because the deals lately have been very, very tight. The profit margins are compressed lately because there's not enough inventory for the investors, and it's challenging. But my favorite is actually one of the commercial properties that we own is a 3-acre industrial lot by Manassas Airport, and we actually have it rented out as a truck yard. So we basically store semi-tractor trailers. And so that's kind of my favorite. But I like everything. I enjoy this business. When people ask me what I do, I basically tell them, especially if somebody doesn't know anything about real estate investing. There you go. But basically what I tell people what I do for a living is I tell them I basically play Monopoly for a living. We collect houses, we collect loans, we collect tax lien certificates, and that's sort of what we do. We build and manage assets.
Take those green houses, turn them into red buildings, or in the case of your truck yard, I guess those aren't housed, are they? It's literally a plot of land that you park trucks on.
Yeah, and so that's a different business model. So we have 75 spaces, and we rent it out for $350 a space. And so we manage that we have online software that we use to manage that. And same thing with our rentals. We manage our rentals through online portal called Propertyware. And then on the hard money side, we manage that via something called the mortgage office. So like Valerie was saying earlier, most of my business processes, we've systematized everything. Our tenants on our rental side pay their rents online. We have 50 rentals, 49 of them are paid online. On the hard money side, we've got probably 90 loans now, and 85% of our borrowers pay their monthly interest payment online as well. So we've got a lot of our businesses automated so that it makes it easier for me to expand.
Now, it wasn't always that way, was it? At what point did you start to systematize so you were able to expand?
Well, that's a good question, because when we first started out, we were just buying pre-foreclosures to fix and flip. And so we didn't even have any bank lines at that time. We were using our HELOCs to sort of afford those properties. Luckily, when you buy primary residences and when the equity goes up, you get a home equity line of credit, a checkbook, and SAM, did the same thing. He had a checkbook. And so our first fix and flip back in 2004, we basically used that to actually purchase it. And then we had a contractor come in there and do the work. And he basically did it with us promising him that we would pay back his GC expenses on the HUD one when we sold the house. So that was pretty good. And so we basically built up our business by doing, one distressed asset flip at a time. And then we finally got the capital stack to move into other avenues. And so probably about 7 or 8 years into the business, when we owned about 12 or 14 rentals, that's when we started to process that business and systematize it.
It reminds me of, was it one of the Rocky Balboa movies? I think it's that, one step, one punch, one step, one punch. A lot of people don't, they think it's going to magically start raining, or you put the work in, you do the one deal, you work on the next deal, you work on the next deal, you work on the next deal, then you start to build up. You're at a point where now systemization makes sense. Now you can get into other things. There's nothing wrong with putting them in an order, like to create a custom pathway for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And one of the things that I tell new investors is that when you're a new investor, you've got to focus on 2 things. Number one is the education side, right? So you got to constantly educate yourself. And number 2, you've got to be out there finding assets. You need to spend all of your time finding assets and getting educated. And so then once you have a couple of deals in your pipeline, like Tom was saying, you then focus on working on the deals that you have, but at the same time, you got to keep marketing and finding assets. And then the more and more deals that you have in your pipeline, obviously your focus is going to be on working on those deals, whether it's a wholesale deal or fix and flip, or it's a buy and hold in your rental portfolio. And for us, we don't do VROs, we don't do Airbnbs. All of my rentals are long-term in nature. And the reason why we did that is because, well, again, when I started purchasing rentals a while ago, Airbnb didn't exist, VRBO didn't exist. But for us, the short-term rentals, it's a better cash flow, but you've got to pay a lot more attention to your properties. So like for us, if I can buy a house as a rental, sock it away, I put a tenant in there for a year, I don't have to worry about it for a long time, and I can build and expand. And for us, when our tenants have problems, they actually log in their problems on our website, and a work order is created, and our maintenance guys show up the next day. And so by doing that, we have a really good relationship with all of our tenants, and guess what? They stay in our houses. So I've got houses where tenants have actually raised kids there, and their kids have graduated from high school, and they love us. And so back in the day, if they were paying their rents on time, we would never even raise the rents. But because of the economy and because of asset appreciation and expenses on insurance and our property taxes going up, we did have to raise rents on these guys just to even break even on our cash flow from the from the tax increase, from the insurance increase. So we just, we really haven't raised our rents that much. We have caught up lately on market rents, but that's only when we've had a tenant move out. But if they're on time and they're current, we don't really raise rents that much.
Gotcha. So they get a benefit out of that.
Yeah.
So what's the most frustrating thing you found in the business? Any aspect of it?
It's the 3 T's, right? Tenant, toilet, and trash. At the very beginning, we had a lot of Section 8 properties. So if you guys don't know what Section 8 is, it's the government housing vouchers. And we had a lot of those properties, and we love the Section 8 program. But over time, what has happened is that Section 8 is HUD pretty much has the money, and it sort of propagates down to the jurisdictions. And what's happened is that funding has dried up within HUD for Section 8 voucher program. And so what's happened is that if the tenant's not a 100% voucher holder, they're going to pay a portion of their rent. So let's say, for example, if the rent's $2,000, they might get $1,700 Section 8, but then they have to pay their $300. And so sometimes for us, it's kind of challenging to collect that $300. And so that gets to be a pain every now and then. But remember, though, a lot of our tenants have been with us for a very long time, 12, 14 years. And, for us, we got to collect the rents, the $300. And sometimes it's a little bit of a hassle. So it's kind of annoying, but it's okay.
I had started off at the very beginning of the meeting talking about how you you might focus on one thing right now, and then your life changes a bit, or your interest changes, or the business grows, or you have different plans, your kids, your whole family changes. You've got a lot of different types of real estate investing going. So what's caused those? Is it been opportunity? Well, like, what's caused your change in path? Is it either the opportunity? Is it you personally? Is it like, walk us through how an investor should think through that? I'm kind of trying to draw out your own story and then let people figure out how it relates to them.
It's also too what Valerie talked about earlier, though. It's also the shifting markets, right? So when we started collecting rentals back in 2005, 6, and 7, the 08-09 crisis hadn't happened yet. And so we had 8 rentals that we had at the time. And we had bought them at 75% of the ARV at the time. And so we bought them really well. And we got a 50% loan on that 75%. So our properties, we only had a 50% of it loan. The rest of it was equity. Well, what happened was the crash hurt us so bad in 08, 09 that the values of our properties went underneath. Some of the values got divided by 2, especially some of the single families in Dale City. They went from $400,000 to $100,000. They dropped. And so what happened is the leverage on our properties, we became overextended in the bank size because we had community loans from community banks. And so they did what was called a capital call on us. So we had to ship them a bunch of money to further equitize our properties because they had dropped so fast. And so basically over time, what has happened, the market shifted, it went down, and then we got an incredible appreciation growth on our same rentals. And so remember, I had to pay down that debt in cash to get them correctly capitalized to the bank. And because what happened was the market appreciated, we had a lot of equity in our properties. We were still acquiring properties, but over time, we ended up getting into the hard money space because one of my courthouse competitors got us into that space. So basically what we've done is we've created a bunch of different residual income streams within our business model so that no matter how the economy changes, we're able to react into the changing economy. And so that's sort of how we morphed into it. And the tax lien certificate piece came in about 5 or 6 years ago. And the way that works is that if you don't pay your property taxes, the various government entities like in Montgomery County or PG County or DC, they issue out somebody's property taxes in the form of a tax lien certificate. And so like in Washington, DC, they pay out an 18% return. So now we've morphed our business into 4 different income flowing streams: the rental portfolio, residential, commercial, the hard money, the tax lien certificates, and the fix and flip. So we have a variety of different income streams. And so that's enabled us to continue.
Did you say your competitor got you into one of those businesses?
Yeah, so what happened is we were purchasing our properties, both pre-foreclosures and foreclosures. And so what had happened is when you go to, I don't know if you guys have ever been to your county foreclosure auctions. And so I was a mainstay at our auctions, especially here in Virginia. I'm in Northern Virginia. And so at Prince William County, starting in 2009, even all the way today, I've been attending the courthouse auctions. So what happens is when you attend these courthouse auctions for foreclosures, you end up seeing the same people time and time again, right? And so what happens is you have a lot of downtime in between auctions. So you end up talking about your family, your wife, your situation, just your personal background. And we all get to know each other, not intimately, but we know each other pretty well. We know each other down to the aspect of we know what property types they're buying at the auction. I even know how much they're going to pay for it, and so I know what they like. And so over a period of time, so then what happened was in 2012, the courthouse foreclosure auctions, the profit margin started to compress. And one of my competitors came up to me and he goes, and this is before we're even in the private lending space. He goes to me, "Hey, Charlie," and he knew I was sitting on a little bit of money. He said, "Charlie, I just bought a condo in Fairfax County." We're in Prince William County auction at the time. He goes, "The condo's worth $350. I bought it for $225. He goes, "Will you give me the loan for $225 on that condo?" And so I was sort of shocked. I was taken aback. I was like, okay, well, I guess we're kind of ready to enter into another space. Didn't think it was the private lending hard money space. And I just said to him, I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." but I had no idea what I was doing. So then I got my car, I called my partner. I said, Sam, I said, somebody wants a $225,000 loan on a condo that was built in 2006 in Fairfax County that's worth $350,000. I just said yes. I had no idea what I was doing. So then I went back home and I figured out, I better figure out how to do the lending business. And so I figured out what the going rates were and points. I presented him with a one-page term sheet that defined the loan. He basically signed the term sheet, sent it back. And then I had to scramble and get some loan docs in order and get a title company ready to close it. And that's how we started the hard money business, was because a competitor that I knew on the fix and flip side got us into it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love the backstory on a lot of these things. It's always it's fascinating. You mentioned your partner, Charlie. Charlie had popped on earlier when we introduced you guys, Clear Sky, as Traction sponsors. Have you guys been partners for the whole time? Has it been 20 years?
He's my, as my current wife says, he's my second wife. I probably know my partner better than I know my wife.
Gotcha.
Not like that though.
Gotcha. Nice.
We've been partners for a long time. And so the one thing about Sam is, and anytime you're taking on a partner, what you have to realize is that the two of you can do a lot more than one of you can. And his back end skills enabled us to grow, because he was the guy that processed a lot of our, flips. He processed our rentals. He processed our loan business and systematized it. I did too, but he was the bigger advocate for that. And so he allowed us to exponentially grow. But now the problem is that he's a very honest guy. So I can trust him with money. And so in our case, you have to have a trusted partner. If you don't have a trusted partner, then I suggest not even get one. But in our case, he's very trusted. And we, my assets that I bring to the table is a lot different than him. He presented earlier. I'm a people-oriented person. I'm more of a sales guy, marketing guy. He's kind of a back-end guy. The only reason he showed up tonight was because I told him, I said, look, I got caught up in another meeting. Can you at least do the Clear Sky piece? And that's why you guys saw him. He's sort of the guy behind the curtain.
Pull the curtain back. There was Oz for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Good. No, nothing wrong with that. What about, I think there's a lot of good partner advice in there. But now in your hard money lending businesses, you're working with other investors. You see partnerships that don't work as well as you and Sam?
We do. And one of the partnerships that we absolutely imploded on accident was one of our borrowers. So I can call them by their first name, but I wouldn't say their last name, Carson and Terry. So Carson and Terry were very good friends, and they were database guys. They worked together for the government, and they were database guys, but they wanted to fix and flip properties in Waldorf, Maryland. And so we gave them a couple of loans, and they had a niche market that they created where they would get 2-level townhouses in Charles County and Waldorf. They were 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. And at the time, they were picking them up for, $80,000 to $100,000, putting in $30,000 of renovation, and they were selling them for $180,000 to $190,000 at the time. And so they did this. They did about 6 or 7 successful deals. But then what happened, though, is they came to us, and we're part of the reason for the implosion. They said, hey, we don't want to do 1 or 2 projects at a time. I want to buy 6 houses at once. And I want to do all these fix and flips. And so they went ahead and they bought these houses, and we allowed them to do it because we lend them the money to do it. But what happened is one of the houses was outside their niche market. It was a single family house. And at the time, and I'll tell you the rest of the story in a second, but it was outside their niche market. So what happened is they bought the 6 houses within a month's period of time. And so we lent the money on the 6 projects. But what happened is indirectly, we didn't realize this, but we choked them out. It was too many projects for them to handle at once. And so we were a newer hard money lender at the time. We had no idea that we accidentally choked them out. So what happened is they were successful on the 2 properties, right? 2 out of the 6. They fixed and flipped those successfully. They had the next 2 properties that they were trying to handle. They had contractor problems. They got into arguments with their contractor. They had got arguments with themselves. What we didn't realize is that there was a single family property, which was, I'll call it property number 6, that they had owned. And at this point in time, they had owned it for 3 months. But what we didn't realize is that they hadn't been to that property in 3 months, and that the electricity wasn't even on. And it was during the summer months, and that the basement flooded because the sump pump didn't work. and the basement had about 1.5 feet of water into it, right? Because they hadn't been over to check on their property. And so the basement ended up getting mold. And so what happened was is the last 2 properties that they had out of the 6, they couldn't get to them. So they got into a fight. They did. And so their partnership ended and they had to give those last 2 properties back to us. And so that partnership imploded because they couldn't get on equal ground on what each person's role was, because Terry lived in Waldorf and he was supposed to be managing the projects. Meanwhile, Carson lived in Woodbridge, Virginia, which was about an hour and 15-minute drive to Waldorf, non-traffic, mind you. And so that partnership imploded, and they were really good friends. And I, to this day, I feel bad about it.
It's sometimes partnerships are tough, and sometimes biting off more than you can chew before you're ready for it is tough, particularly if the systems aren't there yet. It's one thing to try to put them in place as you go, but that's it. Tim's asking, what did you do with those imploded properties? You repossessed them?
Yeah, they did. They were nice enough, and they didn't put a second trust on top of us. So remember, I'm a lender on it. So they simply did a deed in lieu of foreclosure on both of them. And we immediately, well, the one property, we got our crews in there right away, and we did the work, and we ended up putting it on the MLS and selling it and getting back some money and some. But the house that had the mold in it was a different story, because the Charles County got wind of it, that this house had mold in it. And they sent an inspector by there, found out that it had mold, right? And we had to do what's called a mold remediation. Oh, by the way, there was a old hazardous container in the front yard that must have been used for an oil, for an oil tank to oil heat the house. That was buried in the front yard. So we had to dig that up. We had to get a soil test and get it approved to the county that said the soil was okay. So that was sort of a nightmare scenario. We finally got out of it. We finally sold it. And I think we were lucky to get a full principal recovery on that deal. We might have lost 5 or 10 grand. I don't remember.
Cut it close. We cut it close.
Yeah.
All right, I've got one more question from the chat, and then our time is up, and I'll be moving that spotlight on. So it's Horace is asking, do you still work with Section 8? You mentioned it earlier. Are you still involved with it?
We still are. Yeah. So at one point in time, 20 of our properties were Section 8 out of the 50. Now, though, because of the cutbacks, we're down to about 10. Okay. And so I actually have a good Section 8 story in that one of the properties that I own with my sister outside of Sam, we've had the same Section 8 tenant in there since 2009. She raised a couple kids in there, and she's actually finally graduating out of the Section 8 program, and she's going to be paying full market rent. Matter of fact, starting August 1st.
Nice.
It's pretty good.
Congrats. Yeah, congrats all.
Awesome. Yeah.
Charlie, you've been a Traction member and sponsor for a number of years. What's the number one thing you get out of Traction?
Well, what I like out of Traction is that you guys bring in an array of speakers, right, on different fronts. And I think a lot of the members have they've benefited because of the different kinds of speakers, because as we know in real estate, it's a diversification game, right? We all want to start out being wholesalers or fix and flippers. We want to build our capital stacks, but at the end of the day, it's about the diversified income streams. And so, the guy speaking on assisted living, that's been very good. Tony Young's on the hidden market is probably one of the best speakers I've ever heard speak, because he teaches you guys how to find assets on the hidden market and how to build your capital stack. And other guys that have come through Traction who have offered their ideas, the guy selling the modular homes, find a piece of land, buy the modular home, put the modular home on the land, rent it out. I mean, that's a great strategy. So that's the one thing I like about Traction is the diversity of the speakers and giving you guys as investors more than one idea, because you guys need a lot of ideas, because just like Valerie was saying, well, this idea about, assisted living, that sort of struck a chord with me. And I felt that I could be successful going down that path. And that's what it's all about, guys, is to your success. And that's what I like.
Cool. Charlie, awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.